A simply delicious sourdough sandwich loaf is absolutely no mystery at all. It just requires some simple pantry staples like simmered scalded milk, some lovely organic butter, some lovely orange blossom honey, some egg yolks, and good quality flour. The key ingredient is to make sure that you let your scalded milk come to room temperature before you add your sourdough starter so that you don't kill your yeast, and then to mix at the right times. We are going to add our yolks and our 3 cups of butter, or I'm sorry, 3 cups of flour, and we're going to mix this on low for approximately 5 minutes. And you can see how bubbly our sourdough starter is. Now for the sourdough sandwich loaf. After I have added the last 2 cups of flour, it just needs to be kneaded for approximately 5 to 8 minutes on medium. You can also knead by hand if you do not have a stand mixer. And you just want to add enough flour so that the dough pulls cleanly away from the sides of your bowl. So it depends upon which flour that you're using. You may need to use anywhere from 5 to 6.5 cups of flour total in your recipe. That will all be determined upon the temperature and the humidity on the day that you're making your bread. Unfortunately, I have found with bread, it's not necessarily the same amount every single day. If it's hot outside, if it's rainy outside, if it's cold in the house, if it's damp in the house, if I've got a fire going, if I've got windows open, that all is determined upon how my bread is going to turn out. Once your dough has been mixed for the 8 minutes in your mixer, then it's time to go ahead and dump it out onto your bench and divide it up for your sandwich loaves. And you just want to evenly divide this out and then shape it for your 2 loaf pans. And I am not going to do anything fancy other than roll it up and pinch my edges. Make sure it's about the same size as my loaf pan and drop it in. That's one thing I like about this particular recipe is it is so easy easy to work with. The dough is extremely forgiving. And I always let this particular recipe rise in my loaf pan rather than letting it rise in a bowl and then shaping it later. I have found that if I leave it rise in a bowl and then go ahead and reshape it in my pan later, it doesn't give me the same amount of rise, even though it does give you absolutely outstanding flavor by doing it that way. And you can either go ahead and put it directly in your proofing bag and let it rise to double in size and bake it off right away, or you can just drop it in your fridge and let it do a slow ferment that way, and you can bake it off. Gosh, I've let it rise in my fridge up to like 4 or 5 days. Again, absolute excellent flavor. I've even baked it off overproofed up to 7 or 8 days in my fridge. And again, still not bad at all. Excellent sandwich loaf. It stayed very soft, I think almost up to a week if kept in a either a linen or cotton bag for sandwich bread, or plastic bags, or a Ziploc bag, or covered of some sort. Is a great way to keep your sandwich loaf. Ours usually doesn't last quite that long. Once it starts to get a little bit tough, then we go ahead and just use it for something other than sandwiches, whether it's French toast or just toast at that point in time, or we turn it into croutons or something like that. And then once it's ready to bake, then I go ahead and bake it for 40 minutes at 325 degrees. Let me double check that though. Actually 40 minutes at 350 degrees. Again, everybody's oven bakes at a little bit of a different temperature, so make sure that you double check your loaf. I usually start checking my bread about 10 minutes early. So go ahead and cover our loaf so that we can long ferment this. And you want to let it go ahead and rise and double in size. And you want to let that do somewhere warm in your home. And if you don't have anywhere warm, the warmer your home is, the quicker that's going to happen. And with it being, you know, kind of wintry here in Wisconsin, ours is going to take at least 12 to 24 hours in our house because it's not all that warm. So I have mine rising in the living room. And then this particular one, I'm going to go ahead and just put in a bag, and I'm going to put it in my refrigerator so that I can bake it off later in the week. And I am just using a regular plastic grocery bag. And that I will just pop right in the fridge, and I'm going to let mine rise at least overnight, if not a bit longer, for the one that I've got rising in the living room. And the longer that your sourdough rises, the more sourdough flavor you're going to get in your loaf. But this particular recipe is going to give you a lovely sourdough flavor into your loaf, as well with it being an enriched dough, because we've got the milk and we've got the butter and we've got egg yolk in there. So it's going to be a slow rising bread to begin with. And because we've got sourdough starter as our leavener, it's going to be extra slow because there's no yeast to it. So you're going to have a nice rich flavor as well as a nice soft sandwich loaf. So it's actually quite a yummy little bread to have. And as you can see, it's a very, very, very easy dough to work with. It shapes up quick, it mixes up lovely. The only thing that's a little bit funky with this particular recipe is it's very affected by the humidity outside. So you've got to be a little bit careful on that second time that you're adding flour to add just the right amount to get the right dough consistency, so that you're adding just enough flour for the bread to pull away from the sides of your mixing bowl but not adding too much that you get too stiff of a dough. You still want it to be a little bit tacky, but stiff enough to give you a nice bread dough that it's nice and easy to work with. And as you can see, it's super easy to deal with, and it's super forgiving if you get the right amount of flour in the mixture. And this particular time I ended up using maybe 5 and just a hair under a 1/4 cup.